Yeah, if not, I can try.
Okay, it looks like that
Okay,
works.
recording is
So,
on.
yeah, recording is on now. And I guess we can start with the product updates. Caden, are you ready to talk about Omen? Geronimo's on a much needed break for this week.
Yeah.
I have the release notes up if you want.
1.4 release.
Yeah, just the latest release of what's new.
Yeah, you have the release notes, eh? Let me just actually.
Yeah, I can read it. I don't have it on this machine, but looks like there were some fixes for the incorrectly displayed market liquidity, adding an alert message for markets with no liquidity, and another message if the trading fee input is negative. Reality.io has a new website, reality.eth, and so that link has been updated. Good to see them on ENFs. And disallowing liquidity on markets that have already been past the resolution date, which makes sense.
Yeah, so with this release, we had a lot more planned, but it was kind of mostly related to subgraph changes. And that's been a real bottleneck for us because it's just Alan working on it. And I'm sure he's got a lot on his plate. So the past few days, I've been digging into the graph of it. So that's going to be something that I'm focusing on more going forward. And then next few releases, we should be able to get a lot more valuable things done.
Nice. What's up next for the next one?
Yeah, so like for example, we have an issue with the My Markets tab where it will only display markets that I think you purchased outcomes in, and not ones that you funded liquidity, for example. There's also, we want to use a token registry so that we can determine so we can inform users whether markets are valid or invalid based on kind of our governance. So that'll give us like a little check mark if it's a valid market. Also, I know that I think it's an issue with the Gnosis proxy kit where gas limit estimations have been off, and that's been a big UX issue.
Sure, that's frightening because they're already scary enough.
Yeah.
I've seen some reports where people are like, what? Half an ETH?
Yeah. Oh, it's been gross. But yeah, and then also we're looking at getting dark mode, which would be fun. So nice. Geronimo will be designing that soon.
Pretty cool.
I'm just looking forward to that.
Good stuff. On Mesa, there is nothing new to report this week, but I did speak with the Gnosis devs working on kind of the core repo, which Mesa forks off of and is based off of, and there are efforts now to make like a new like the UI more focused on the order book. Right now, the order book kind of is a pop-up that you have to click on in a modal, and so there's talk and I think an effort now to make that kind of just naturally fit into the UI. So I think that would be a good update. And then some work I think also on helping interfaces for the market makers. And then that's all I am aware of. Hen, do you have anything to update on Mesa?
Not specifically on Mesa, but I guess a few members already also joined me. But we had a few calls with teams looking to do an ITO. So nothing really new, but it's this use case seems to really get traction. Next week there's going to be an IDO of a project that really didn't talk even to us or Gnosis or DXdao, but So interesting to see. That's it.
Yeah, it's an open platform, so interesting to see when it gets used, just kind of by surprise on our end. And yeah, and then you and Ingemar are also working on guides for.
Right. I asked one of the projects that listed without talking to anybody, like why, and it just wasn't like a consideration. They were very much like, we're doing it this way because we're doing it this way. But I'm like, don't you understand that like you could get like some extra value by even just trying? And I don't know, they kind of met that with just like, we don't care.
Yeah. I guess for some projects, perhaps it's more of they're just going down a checklist and they're not thinking too deeply about different things. But I think it makes sense for when we get these materials out, we'll just make it very clear what the value is for getting it properly listed and talking with the DXdao community about doing listings.
Yeah, or they don't want their scam to be exposed. So maybe it's better that we have some kind of that projects know that we don't want to engage with fishy projects.
Right. Yes, there should be some standards for projects that getting listed, at least in my opinion. Yeah. Although of course you can't stop them from just pasting in the address and listing on Gnosis protocol. All right. Augusto, do you want to give an update for DXswap?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm working on the integration of the fees, which is almost done. It is actually like done, but I'm doing some final changes to do the first official releases of the DXswap core and periphery contracts that are the ones that are going to be used in the DXswap app. And I'm planning to do to announce a release of the 0.20 version of the DXswap application on Koban, where we are going to be able to test the DXD token pool and another pools with different fees, and even with the protocol fee on. So that's the plan for the next week. We are going to have that up and running, and then mainnet deployment is going to come around, and then mainnet announce is going to happen. But yeah, everything is going good there. I was sharing on Keybase some updates and deployments of the app, of the current of the app working with the Koban contracts. Yeah, I was sharing that during this week with the fees. That's it. It's happening. It's a lot of work, but yeah, it's luckily it's happening. Like it's almost done. I just need to document a bit more and making sure that everything is nice and ready for the mainnet release.
That's great. Yeah, I think it can be tempting to think, oh, you're just changing one fees, right? But it's you forget like how much a one kind of critical change can ripple through the whole system and require a lot of work.
Yeah, actually, I just updated the 0.0 release on DXswap core, and if you enter the release note, you can see a changelog of all the commits between Uniswap, B2 core master and DXswap core master. So you can see all the commits that happen. You can go through them. You can go through all the changes. I'm going to do the same for DXswap periphery contracts.
Great, and I encourage people to take a look. And provide a review if you can. Good stuff. So I think the last product to talk about would be Rails.eth. I don't think Federico is on the call, but he had drafted a worker proposal. I actually think the only thing holding him back from making the proposal already is these gas prices. But he is planning to make that proposal and work on launching Rails.eth. Which will be great because of these gas prices. The interface to Loopring Pay. So that's all I know of. Does anybody else have any product updates that they want to share or anything on the product side? Yeah, if not, then
Can someone speak on the? I'm sorry if this was mentioned earlier because I was kind of occupied with the first 10 minutes. But was XDAI brought up regarding like?
We haven't mentioned that and on this call. No, I mean I did see. What was it, Martin tweeting about whether it would make sense to have Omen on XDAI?
Yeah, I have no idea how feasible it is.
So, I guess. We just actually got off a call. We've had a pretty good chat about that. And Omen on, or like the conditional tokens framework, and ideally Omen along with it, on some layer 2 network is something that we are going to put a fair bit of thought into over the next few weeks or whatever. XDAI is the most usable option right now. Like the most usable place that you can go and deploy essentially your unaltered Solidity contracts. There's other options if you obviously willing to rewrite things, but if we just want to deploy things as is, then XDAI is the most viable thing right now. But the I guess caveat is it has some very different trust properties to mainnet, and so I know that there's my personal feelings, like I'm not a huge fan of proof of authority. I know that it tends to be pretty polarized opinions on it. And so obviously that's something that the DXdao would need to kind of take into consideration and think about like what trust properties it actually wants to have in layer 2 version, if it even wants to have a layer 2 version of Omen. But with gas prices the way they are currently, and showing no indication of moving in the opposite direction anytime soon, it's using Omen in its current form is pretty the kind of baseline for the size of a trade that you have to make for it to be worthwhile outputting that gas is really, really high right now. Like making a trade I think right now would cost you like $30. So you need to have it needs to be a pretty decent sized position. It kind of rules out any just fun markets essentially. And so what we'd like to be able to do is create smaller, more fun markets that people can have kind of they can interact with more frequently. And so that's why kind of pushing for some kind of a layer 2 solution I think is a great idea. What it is totally up for debate. If people have preferences, then voice them now. That'd be great. Some of the other things that we're currently exploring, Matic, Optimism rollups, a few different variants of XDAI. So obviously there's XDAI, but there's also we could potentially deploy our own instance of the XDAI chain using say like OWL as the native token. And then there's a handful of other scaling solutions like Scale and I think I already mentioned Matic and who else have we got? I'm trying to remember where my notes were. But a handful of them that are worth us kind of looking into. What else is, Aztec probably wouldn't work. ZK Sync and Starkware, but they would require us to rewrite things. So I guess I would love to hear from everyone here. Do you have any preferences on layer 2 solutions and kind of what's everyone's thoughts about making another version of it?
How it will work with the arbitration without real issue and Kleros?
Yeah, so I think reality.eth would be easy enough to deploy another instance of elsewhere. So we can probably deploy that alongside of the conditional tokens framework. Kleros is another story. It's a kind of larger, more complex system, and obviously requires for it to work as intended, requires people to be kind of staking. So there's two ways you could do it. One would be to deploy another instance of Kleros and have people stake on that instance. The other would be to use something like Proof of Authority. POA Network has an arbitrary message bridge. So with that, you could leave Kleros where it is and essentially have the arbitration actions cross over that arbitrary message bridge between chains. And the third would be to just run an instance that that doesn't use Kleros, so it just relies entirely on reality.eth. So there would be no arbitration for that, but it would just rely on that kind of ultimate oracle principle.
Yeah, so there will be like kind of because the stakes will be much lower, there will be kind of griefing attacks that people can just troll with larger amounts, and then other people don't have even the interest to dispute it or something like this.
Well, there's always an interest in disputing it. Like the whole point of that ultimate oracle mechanism is that there's always the shelling point is the truth, and you're always incentivized to get the thing to get the question to resolve to the truth, whether or not you care about the outcome of the question itself or have a stake in the outcome of the question itself. Because of that staking mechanism, you can because of the kind of increasing size of deposit, like every time that an incorrect deposit is put down to kind of change the outcome of something, then that increases your incentive to correct it again. That said, obviously the decision with Omen was made to go with the arbitration process to avoid that kind of constantly escalating game. So I don't know. That's one option. I mean, I think that like the preference would be to have Kleros involved in the same way that it is now, or in some way, either having an instance of it deployed on the layer 2 chain or having some kind of message bridge back to the canonical instance of Kleros.
Got it. Thanks.
Do you know, Oren, how many nodes are on POA chain and what other info there might be about them? I was trying to look on their, I feel like they used to have a website that maybe is no longer.
Yeah, I have no information on that. We can certainly do some digging and find out though.
Yeah, it might be interesting to do a little bit of due diligence on like the actual nodes and like how it works. I vaguely remember POA network being composed of like notarized, like it was something like 21 nodes, and like a lot of them had like were notary publics in the United States, and so you could verify that. I'm curious how that would like kind of maybe impact any decision. Also, I'd be interested to know how hard it would be to deploy, like if there were to be a new like OWL token based POA chain, and maybe maybe DXdao community members could be the nodes or like rep holders or something that ties it kind of more closely to like the existing.
Yeah, I think that could be really interesting. Yeah, like if it was like the list of nodes was curated by the DXdao or something like that, that would be really cool.
Yeah, or there was at least enough representation by the DXdao that you're kind of like aligning those trust assumptions are not like kind of, you're not like compounding them, right? It's like, well, you're already trusting DXdao to run Omen, and so you can trust them to run the chain as well. But
yeah.
The advantage of DXdao is like, I think there's at least a little, I'm not entirely sure, but there's a little like already community and engagement around it, and there's assets there. So basically, if you run your own L2, you need to bootstrap it from zero, get people like deposit their funds and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable point. I don't think that they have enough traction, like enough of a network effect to really justify kind of using that and excluding other options. I don't think they're far enough away from essentially like starting at zero that it would justify kind of neglecting other options, or at least not exploring other options as well. It is valid.
Oren, Matt here. One thing we could do, and I kind of discussed this with John very lightly, is we can't deploy Omen in its whole form on Loopring or on a ZK rollup at all, as you mentioned. But we could have the trading. I mean, if the trades are what you're saying is prohibitively expensive, and maybe creating the markets, it's like a larger person that could get over that hurdle. Trading on Loopring ZK rollup is possible. If we ERC20 wrap the outcomes right now, like it's something that actually we've been discussing internally, and so we could wrap the tokens, and it could be, you know, yes versus die or no, like however you do that, and that's like good to go, like whenever. It just, I guess there's some work. Yeah, and then in the upcoming version, in like 2 months from now, version 3.6, we could support ERC 1155s natively, so no need to wrap it. You could trade the outcomes. So again, we can't like do the whole thing, but trading we could do right now by wrapping it. So maybe you could have like one bulk person that wraps a whole bunch of the outcomes, and we could experiment with like a very popular market and just list that pair. And I'm not sure if, yes, so that's that. And then in 2 months, it could be just trading natively there, no need to wrap. So that's something to consider. If like, we'd be happy to help you learn more or dig into that. The one thing is, I'm not sure if we would put it on the loopring.io interface for maybe regulatory reasons or just in general, like maybe it gets cluttered. How do we expose it? So maybe it has to be like you have this, you could do this all by speaking to Loopring's API, just like any kind of centralized exchange. It's one thing. So you could expose it on Omen, or we could expose it on like a slightly different UI, or it could be a different tab. But yeah, that, just to let you know, it's an option to trade like right now, if we want to do that.
Okay, yeah, I think that's an interesting option to explore as well. I guess two things. One, so like the Omen right now uses this automatic market maker contract, and so would we be able to replicate that on Loopring, or does that exist already on Loopring? And then the other thing is, I mean, if we're most of the time, like when you're interacting with the automatic market maker, you're just kind of like I don't know, I haven't seen a whole bunch of like back and forth trading. Like you buy and then you sell, and the AMM right now doesn't give you an option to like trade yes for no or something like that. Like you buy yes, you sell yes, you buy no, you sell no, kind of thing. So there's not like a whole lot of back and forth between options, which, yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to figure out like what that might look like, what the flow might look like for a user who comes in to try to buy an outcome and then later on sell an outcome, or buy an outcome and then claim the collateral later. And if there would actually be any gas savings or like significant gas savings, given that I imagine that the flow still involves a pretty decent number of mainnet transactions. But we can do this out of band here. I don't think this needs to happen in this.
Right. You're just brief. We can't support the AMM get like the full thing. We'd basically have to just take it and represent it as like take one outcome, I guess, represent it as its own asset and trade it on the order book gas free. So then people could, if they're on loopring.io or if they come there, they could trade it for no gas, but then yes, it's true, interact with layer one when they want to redeem or actually, exit, they'd have to get off, trading on this fast lane and go back to layer. So yeah, we would have to, yeah.
So that makes me think that there probably wouldn't be all that much in the way of gas saving, because the thing that eats gas right now is one, like interacting with the automatic market maker, and then two, splitting and merging tokens, which, yeah, if we can't move those two things to layer two, then it probably doesn't give us much of an improvement unless we just totally change the way that trading works.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Maybe we should have a talk with our lead architect and yourself and whoever. John and I were saying maybe we should do that anyway. So now that you bring it up, we could quickly see if there's something to do. Otherwise, no worries.
Yeah, totally. Well, and to like just on that, like wrapping outcome tokens and then putting them into other exchanges is something we're totally wanting to explore. Alan's already written an ERC20 wrapper for the conditional tokens, so that's something we should explore either way. Whether or not it becomes the solution to kind of scaling Omen or kind of Omen on layer 2, I don't know, but it's either way, it's interesting.
Agreed. Okay, sounds good. Let's speak offline.
Cool.
Yeah, it's super interesting though, and I suspect it sort of has to do with what kind of use case, what use case you're looking at. Like, so the beauty of Loopring is you have the same trust guarantees of Ethereum, but it's really only giving you an advantage on the trading. So I almost think like maybe high volume markets is where that could be useful, versus like if you want to allow people to spin up kind of low liquidity, fun little markets, then that's where something like DXdao would be more useful. But yeah, good stuff, and looking forward to see how this kind of evolves.
Yeah, just to because I think it's such an important discussion. I was just talking about Omen, but gas is like a fact of life, and it's kind of really affecting a lot of different things. And I think the shift to layer 2 is going to be a huge kind of secular trend over the next, I think, more like a year, really. And the next couple months to 6 months, I don't think there really are going to be solutions that you can like port something easily to the layer 2, and whether that's like the actual, like not having the optimism or something that it can actually run that, or it's just the lack of composability. Having said that, there are a lot of different layer 2 options, and I think the DXdao should think strategically about how it uses different ones, because like not value, I guess, like the property matters, right? If you're in these different layer 2 solutions, that could be a really interesting way of attracting liquidity. And my first thought was on kind of the hybrid solutions, and kind of what Matt was saying, where clearly that's not like a real prediction market, but if you could get like great volume on just the Trump and Biden market through Loopring, like that would be a great win for the next kind of 3 months. So yeah, I'm just thinking about the solutions and which ones can kind of be implemented now, but knowing that this is a trend that will really present opportunities for firms that are for kind of projects that are in the right scaling solution.
Yeah, there's a huge macro trend here, like where this is going to define blockchain and crypto and Ethereum going forward. And it's, yeah, crazy stuff.
One thing worth pointing out on that as well, Matic right now is kind of incentivizing, providing some pretty decent sized incentives for projects to actually deploy onto their solution. So it may be
very interesting. I just haven't heard any layer 2 solutions, and that makes perfect sense, right? That's going to be the next thing.
Yeah, so that may be something that's worthwhile considering for the DXdao. Is it actually kind of a lucrative venture for us to go and deploy this thing onto another chain because we're going to receive an incentive to do it? And maybe they're just a mix of different deployments on it of solutions across different layer 2 platforms.
Cool. You're already in touch with somebody from Matic, Oren?
Yep.
Yeah. Very cool.
I can dial you into a conversation there if you like as well.
Nice.
Since we're talking about Omen, if you guys don't mind me monopolizing the conversation too much, one other thing that I'm really, really keen to explore, if any of you guys have followed me on Twitter recently, I've been really hammering this like prediction market mediated decision making. The idea of like being able to infer the effect that an outcome has on the price of a pair of assets. And so the ETH2 market was a really great example of that. We had one in USDC and one in wrapped Ether. And the two markets are trading at slightly different odds, which kind of infers or from that we can kind of derive that the market is saying there'll be a impact on the price of Ether based on the outcome of this event. And last I checked, basically, like the market was saying, Ether, this event happening, ETH 2.0 launching before 2021 will have an 11% impact on the price, or at least people are willing to pay 11% more for Ether in the case that it does happen versus the case that it does not happen. And that's a really, really cool piece of information. It's one that I'd love to kind of expose within the Omen interface. But even short of that, like it's information that's relatively easy to derive. I've got a nice little kind of toy model on it on Google Sheets that you guys can check out if you want. But this would be like, I'd love to use Omen as a way of, or I'd love to kind of leverage it to get the same kind of insights for all of these projects that are now kind of launching or have launched governance tokens. So like, I think Compound would be a really great one to try it with. Essentially add comp tokens as a collateral for Omen markets. And then for every proposal that gets made in Compound's boardroom instance, then you can essentially spin up a pair of prediction markets, one in DAI and one in comp, that ask the same question, use the same question ID. And then the difference in how those two markets trade, the difference in odds, allows you to infer what the price impact of that decision will be, which for the people that are then voting is a really, really useful piece of information. And so I think like this is something that we can kind of jump on board this trend of governance tokens becoming really popular and actually provide a really, really useful service to people that are now having to or choosing to kind of make decisions for these projects.
I think it's a great idea. Yeah. I'm trying to think of the mechanics of how that, but it's a great idea to kind of just jump on the governance decisions and how.
Yeah.
I guess it's kind of DAO Stack has a version of this really already, but for the other ones, yeah, it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, totally. I started the process of trying to add Ren BTC. So I made a proposal to add Ren BTC, and that was essentially. I don't know if anyone saw, I made a market on them and to piggyback on Joe Lubin and Jimmy Song's bet on the kind of future DApp usage. And so I made one in Ether, and I would like to spin up a duplicate of that market in Bitcoin for the exact same reason. So then you can kind of infer what the price impact of that event happening or not happening is on the asset pair of Ether and Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I think this actually dovetails very well with the idea of like governance as a service and also kind of leading the way in governance. Like this is sort of like a very experimental, forward thinking kind of way to look at governance. And I think it would be awesome if DXdao was somehow involved in pushing the envelope there. And yeah, I mean, it's like the prediction market platform and the focus on governance, it kind of fits super naturally into what we're doing.
I think the concept is kind of very intuitive. Like a lot of people, after you explain it, a lot of people will kind of assume that the ETH price will have a positive impact. I don't know the exact percentage, but if ETH2 will ship on time. And even some traders would definitely, I'm sure, will want to bet that it will be more than 11%. But I think that it has to be reflected in the UI more like easily, so people don't need to calculate anything. They just can bet on an outcome. Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I think it's I really like predictions.exchange and thinking about how that's like a front end for different Omen markets or different prediction markets in the background. I think for this, kind of if this is used in some like governance service or governance product, it's kind of like that might be the way that people are actually looking at the distance between it, and they may not even know that it's plugging into this in the background, because it does seem like a nice and specialized product.
Right, exactly, and that's where I think so Compound uses Boardroom, and so you could imagine an option for when you've got a proposal up on Boardroom to essentially spin up a pair of Omen markets, one in some stable currency and one in the governance token, and so on Boardroom it could just show what the predicted price impact of this is. And then on Omen, it just has the markets. Like, you don't necessarily have to expose that information in Omen. That information is relevant wherever the governance decisions are being made. And all Omen needs to see is the markets that they have currently. Obviously, the more information that we can kind of elegantly expose in Omen, that we can expose without cluttering the interface and making it confusing for regular users, the better. But where that information is really relevant is wherever decisions are actually being made.
That's super cool. Looking forward to that discussion continuing, and hopefully we can talk about it more in chat and Keybase and whatnot. Just to keep going here with the call, Ingemar, do you want to recap the BizDev call?
Yes, a lot went down. So we had 3 visitors approach us. We had Almonit, I think Eyal was his name. There might have been 2 guys. Almonit is a decentralized search engine for decentralized websites, and they propose some form of integration with DXdAo's content and a potential investment opportunity. We had Henrique and Alvin of Aluna Social approach us about possible IDO, which I'm pretty excited about, because out of the 4 last IDOs that happened, this is the first one to actually talk directly to DXdAO about it. And it's a good platform, and John and Augusto have pretty big experience helping them develop that, which is great. We hope to have some IDO in the works around the time that DXSwap launches, so that we can just swiftly go from a Mesa IDO directly to a liquidity pool on DXSwap, which they're pretty much down with. We had Daniel from DXdao approach us regarding that proposal he made for advertising DXdAO related products or postings, and he wants it to be a very collaborative effort and not necessarily a strictly business one, which is great. What else? So Ken and I are going to try to put out content to sort of make it clear to projects how to list on Mesa, especially with our help, and how to propose getting their token and the value adds of having the DXdAO community behind them. So yeah, a lot went down, and there was so much going on for each product that we sort of came to the realization of having separate calls for DXSwap and Omen, specific calls just for those matters, as it's tough to cram everything business related for in 1 hour. So there's my messy recap.
Awesome. Augusto, do you want to talk on dev a little bit? Probably not much beyond the product updates, but.
Yeah, sure. Well, we did a recap update of our products. There is a weekly call notes shared on DAO Talk. I mean, Omen is preparing a new release. Not too much on Mesa. Where we were talking, what we were talking about for a long time was with Corey from DMM. He gave us like a technical overview of the requirements that we need to meet to be able to use their governance token, which is quite interesting because we, in order to use the tokens, we need to delegate the tokens to another address that is going to be able to use them. So that's, we were talking about it, and that fits very well with the DXD guild idea, with the ERC20 guild for DXD holders, where they can hold reputation for DXdao, and also a small portion of DMM tokens that we are going to start experimenting with it. So that way, DXdao will delegate a certain amount of tokens to be used on the DXD guild, and it can also do it on different guilds. And that is what we are going to start doing as soon as we get started with the guild's idea and implementation of the DXD holders guild. Yeah, that was very interesting. They are very eager to for us to start using using our governance tokens, because they are quite a lot. So yeah, it was good to start talking with them on that side. Then what else? Then nothing else. Some things about DXSwap, which we already talked about, and that's it. Maybe I can share here the note talks.
Sounds good. Oh yeah, DMM was keen to have DXDAO's involvement, yes, because DXDAO is something of a large DMG holder and could be influential in these governance decisions. Cool stuff. Chris, do you want to talk about the governance call?
Sure. Just posted notes there. Another packed call. Started off with the manifesto that we've kind of been noodling over the last couple of weeks. Some good discussion on how that can kind of be a guide to new people interested in the DXdao, but also kind of lay out some of the principles and ideals of the DXdao. The timeline that we're kind of thinking out this for now, let me just paste this in here, is so we talked about it this week. We'll probably iterate on it over the next week, and then close to final-ish discussion on next Wednesday's governance call, and then maybe move to like a more formal proposal phase. But would like to have some more eyeballs on this, so please, any and all thoughts. Moved on to more general documentation, realizing how that's an important part of community growing and communicating with different stakeholders in the system. So Pete Smith, who had been in, I think it was the call last week, is kind of working on some of that, specifically around DXD documentation, or for the DXD to kind of develop. And I think it's a really important thing when we think about how documentation builds in general, and communicating. Then talked a little bit about both the governance as a service that Augusto mentioned, and also the Mesa and DXSwap ideas. And then lastly, talked a little bit more about the DXD voting rights and how potentially that could work and moving forward. And as Ingemar mentioned, there is a separate DXSwap call now scheduled, which will be tomorrow at this same time, 11 a.m. New York time, and all the rest of the time zones. And that's it from the governance side of me.
Great, thanks, Chris. Anything else that people want to address? We have 10 minutes till the end of the hour, so if anybody wanted to bring up anything, now's a decent time.
Okay, yes. So I was thrown into a group of people on Twitter who have followings and they're fans of the DXD token. I guess the DXdao too, but definitely the DXD token. They've expressed concern over the
Price doubling in a week?
No. Well, namely the DX Trust being just like forever open to minting DXD tokens, and they were kind of concerned that any whale could just like degaff and throw in like $8 million and then just own half of the circulating supply of DXD. So they're proposing, or they're just suggesting, that at some point we should like cap the minting of DXD once it hits a certain point, so that the supply actually is capped. I was wondering what you guys thought of that. It's an interesting issue, because I think when this started, no one predicted that this would be like a concern of like someone throwing in millions into the curve, especially since the goal was 250 ETH, which was 50,000 at the time. But it's becoming a real thing now. So people with deeper pockets and bigger influences, like they're aware that whales exist who could totally just bomb the curve at some point if they wanted.
I would personally wouldn't be so concerned that someone will just buy tokens from the curve, basically paying like ridiculously high prices, and be stuck with the tokens while the DXdao grows its treasury like from this. So me personally, I wouldn't be concerned that someone controls a lot of DXD, but more than that we need to think about funding, basically funding the DAO. And if we feel we don't need funding for a while, so it feels like, I'm not sure how to explain it, but basically it feels, in my opinion, the bonding curve feels a bit inefficient. There's a lot of Ether already locked there, and we didn't even start to send revenue into there. So potentially a lot of more capital will be need to be locked there, in order to start like paying out to DXD investors. And all of this is it also ties into the amount of capital that the DXdao needs right now. And if we for now, I don't think we're well funded, but if we're well funded, why should we keep raising money and basically creating this kind of obligation, or I don't know how to call it, but committing to more investors?
It's interesting that almost completely opposite concerns are kind of arriving at the same conclusion, that the curve should be stopped. Right? Some people are worried that the price, people won't buy because the curve is like a ceiling almost. Other people are worried that people would buy too much. From a technical perspective, so the way stopping the curve could work, right? Just preventing more minting, is there is a parameter that the DXdao has control over, which is a minimum buy from the curve. And so that parameter could be set arbitrarily high, effectively preventing any buys from happening. So the curve would remain, right? The reserve would remain, selling would remain, but it would be impossible to buy from it. So that would be one way to kind of like cap the curve, so to speak. I think, Chen, what you're talking about in terms of the inefficiency of this like buyback reserve in the curve, that would involve like upgrading the whole system and finding a way to deliver revenue to DXD and et cetera would be much more involved. But the capping, once an integration be set up between the DXdao voting and the curve which it owns, then this parameter could be set relatively easily.
Yeah, I think the fundraising framing is like a really important one, right? That it is a way of kind of like raising funds, and that's a lot of the point of it. And so if it doesn't necessarily like no longer need that, then it can kind of alter. I think to people saying that they can like bomb the curve, I think they should do the math on that, because like I think like what I guess like there's 100,000 DXD. There would be close to 100,000 DXD owned by the DXdao. Now you have like 8,000 or 9,000 DXD that's already vested. And so if you bomb the curve, I don't know how much beef that would take, but that would like you pretty quickly end up
to double the circulating supply right now, you need to triple the amount that has already gone in. So it's like north of $9 million to double the circulating supply.
I mean, that would bring the price to 1.
That would double the price of on the curve. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess as I'm saying, you do that, but then like the DXdao controls all of that ETH you just gave it, and that's like the rep holders. The DXD like holders know like say that, and then 2, the value of the DXD that the DXdao owns is just like rocketed up, and so I think in that case it's I see that I think that DAO is insulated from that attack, but from like a fundraising perspective and an offering perspective, I think that's an interesting way to look at the curve. I think companies in traditional markets will go out to capital markets to raise money to fund different projects from time to time, right? They'll issue bonds, issue new shares to sell to the market to then fund something. So in a lot of ways, I guess that's what the DXdao is kind of doing. It's like issuing shares in something and is open for fundraising now, but that doesn't mean that it always needs to be open for fundraising.
Yeah, and selling DXD is basically selling at least 10% of the DAO's revenue, which is, I think, a lot. Theoretically, when the DAO is really established and there's trust in the DAO, it can issue, for example, fixed rate bonds, which basically let the DAO raise funds with much less of an obligation to like pay out. You raise with knowing exactly how much you pay for the money. Now for each DXD we sell, we theoretically can pay unlimited amount of revenue.
Yeah, I feel this is a deeper discussion, but thanks for bringing this up, Ingemar, and everybody for the comments. I do think it's a pretty important discussion. I'm actually working myself on a post about some of these aspects that is fairly detailed, and I'll post that when it's ready in Keybase, hopefully in the next week. So I think this is hopefully we can continue this conversation and maybe even dedicate some specific time to it.
It's probably not enough to say like, oh, they pay a lot to do it. It's too expensive to like mint so much. But that's not necessarily like enough of a defense,
Like they could do the same thing on the Uniswap pool right now, and just like dump a bunch of money, but then they're just going to lose a bunch of ETH.
Yeah, I mean, in some sense, there's always markets are always it's always possible to buy up, everything from a market, right? So there's in some sense
I think
it's not.
The attack, yeah. I mean, I think the attack is specific on the governance part, right? I think everyone's thinking about MKR and how MKR works in the governance angle, and like obviously they had like that GSM or governance security module for dealing with something if someone got like a vast majority of MKR. But since DXD is insulated from rep, I feel like the governance attack is somewhat muted, and then it becomes like a pure market attack. But I think it's interesting. I think it's like a really, like, the curve is kind of something interesting to talk about, all of the different dynamics. But I think economic incentives are kind of what power most of these protocols.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, again, I think this is like an important, and probably, you know, I'm sure there'll be lots of views on this, and we're coming up on the hour here, so I think we can probably wrap this up. And thanks everybody for joining. A lot of good stuff as usual.
You guys, see you. Have a good day.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye, guys. See you.
Later.
See ya.